Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unwrap the true story of a figure you think you know inside and out, Santa Claus. But I guarantee his story is so much older and way more surprising than you probably imagine.
You know the guy, right? Jolly, red suit, a twinkle in his eye, the whole shebang. He's a global icon, the literal poster child for holiday cheer. But what if I told you that picture we all have in our heads? Well, it's just the tip of a very, very big iceberg.
So for this explainer, we are going to trace the myth of Santa Claus all the way back. We're going past the department stores, past the Coca-Cola ads, and digging deep into his truly ancient origins, all the way back to Anatolia.
Okay, so let's start with the Santa we all recognize, the global symbol of generosity and, let's be honest, holiday shopping. But it's so easy to forget that this version of him is actually a pretty new chapter in a very, very old book.
The Santa we know today really came together in two major steps. First, back in the 19th century, you had poems and illustrations that started to lock down his signature look. Then, the 20th century rolls around, and advertising just takes that image and runs with it, turning him into a global phenomenon tied to the holiday economy.
So that begs the question, right? Where did this character even come from in the first place? To get that answer, we've got to look beyond the modern stuff and travel back to a time where history and myth were completely tangled together.
Our story now takes us to Europe, and this is where a real historical person starts to merge with some ancient local legends. The result, a whole new character.
And here he is. This is the real guy at the center of the legend, Saint Nicholas. He was a bishop in what's now Turkey, and he was famous for his incredible kindness, especially his habit of secretly giving gifts to people in need.
But as the stories about St. Nicholas started traveling north through Europe, something really interesting happened. They started changing. His legend began soaking up traits from older winter myths. Suddenly, he's traveling at night, he's got animal companions, and he starts to take on that familiar look of an old man with a long white beard.
Now this is where the story gets really fascinating. What if St. Nicholas wasn't the beginning of the story, but just the next phase? What if he was simply stepping into a role, a job, you could say, that had already existed for centuries?
Okay, now we're getting to the absolute bedrock of the Santa myth. We're going back to Anatolia, but to a time long before St. Nicholas, to really understand the ancient world he was born into.
This quote absolutely nails it. Santa wasn't just invented, he evolved. He's the latest figure in a long, continuous line. You see, long before Christianity, the cultures in Anatolia had their own powerful myths about figures who performed these essential, symbolic jobs.
So when the historical figure of St. Nicholas came on the scene, he stepped into a world that already had these powerful myths. He basically inherited 4 key roles that were already deeply woven into the very fabric of the culture.
These 4 ancient roles, they're like the symbolic engine that's been powering the Santa figure for centuries. He might look different over time, but this stuff is always at his core. Let's break him down. First up, the protector of travelers. Now, ancient Anatolia was a land of dangerous seas and long journeys, so people believed in these supernatural guardians who would ensure a safe trip. This ancient idea is basically the blueprint for Santa's own unbelievable trip around the world in one night.
Next, we've got the hidden benefactor. This is that powerful idea of an unseen helper, someone who gives generously without needing any credit. This is the direct ancestor of St. Nicholas's secret gifts and, you guessed it, Santa's own mysterious deliveries down the chimney.
The third role is the provider of survival. In a world totally dependent on the seasons, people had stories about figures who could bring abundance, especially during the harsh, lean winter months. Santa carries on this exact tradition, showing up with gifts and joy in the darkest, coldest part of the year. And finally, there's the elder authority. That long white beard, it's more than just a look. It's a symbol of wisdom and a special kind of power that exists completely outside our everyday world. Just like Santa, this is a figure of gentle authority who stands apart from normal society.
So you see, this isn't a story about invention. It's about evolution. Santa Claus is just the latest link in an unbroken chain of symbols that stretches back thousands of years. And we can actually watch that whole journey unfold.
This timeline just lays it all out. It starts with those ancient roles in Anatolia. The historical St. Nicholas inherits them. Then his story travels and merges with European myths. It gets standardized in the 1800s and finally becomes the global icon we know today.
It's an incredible journey that connects our modern world directly to the ancient.
And get this, Santa isn't alone. He's really part of a global family of what you could call seasonal messengers. Just look at the Iranian figure Amoo, who also shows up at a key time of year to bring renewal and gifts. They have the same fundamental job.
So the Santa we see in malls and movies, he's not just a modern invention. He is the latest chapter in an ancient story, a story that speaks to our deepest human needs for protection, generosity, and hope.
So why does all this matter? It means that even today's hyper-commercialized Santa is still powered by these incredibly ancient ideas. The roles of provider, protector, and wise elder. That's what gives him his enduring magic.
And that leaves us with one final thought. If the story of Santa runs this deep, what other parts of our modern world are just echoes of a distant past, hiding ancient stories that we've totally forgotten?